with content is it's not scalable. You know, a great movie takes lots and lots of humans to put together, right? And on a smaller scale, a great newspaper takes lots and lots of humans to put together. A great radio station takes real talent, and you know, if you have one great radio station or one great radio app, building more great radio apps generally takes more people creating more content.
What I did to launch on a small scale a media brand, and what I think you could do, anyone could do if they have an idea for a media company. As Donald Trump was being sworn in, a friend of mine wrote to me and said, I need to stay informed. There's so much going on as Donald Trump's being inaugurated, but I need to work too. Is there a resource you found, or are you doing one? Please let me know. Well, I wasn't, but I thought, well, that's kind of what I have done over the years. At the Tribune, I launched the Tribune's daily email news service back in 1999, back before many newspapers were doing news by email. So I knew how to do that. And because of my long career in radio news, basically bringing people the news is central to what I am and what I do. So I thought, well, I could do that. And had some time on my hands, so decided basically what I'm doing on Facebook and on Twitter is sharing news with people. I can make it a little more formal. So I did. So I said, okay, I'm going to start a blog, Chicago Public Square. And I started it on the fairly creaky Blogger platform. WordPress is just as good. Bottom line is I bought the domain for $10 a month, and I paid MailChimp about $22 a month, another $12 a month to scrape my domain and send it out to people. MailChimp lets you put a little pop-up on your website to get people to subscribe. That's free. And I bought some business cards for $24. So I spent about $51 so far. When I launched this, one of the first things I did was I announced to all of my friends on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, those are the ones I use mainly. Hey, I'm launching this new thing, sign up. And because I have, and this probably isn't all that impressive to you young people, about, now 4,000 people who follow me on Facebook, wasn't hard to get, a few hundred of those people at least to sign up to see what Charlie was up to. So MailChimp costs a little bit more as you grow more subscribers. And I now have about 1,500 subscribers daily getting my Chicago Public Square daily email. And I pay MailChimp about $23 a month. So, we're kind of in the realm of, at least for the first few months, $66 totally. And then on a continuing basis, $25 a month. Again, kind of trivial as you're building a brand. And, a couple of 6-packs of beer. I don't buy beer, so I'm not sure how much it costs. But one of the challenges of doing this, and one of the challenges of working on the internet, is that I love this quote from Leonardo da Vinci: "Art is never finished, only abandoned." One of the reasons I gave myself that 10 o'clock in the morning deadline was when you're building something on the web, it's easy to go back in and tweak it and say, oh, I could make that better. I could add a picture. I could add another link. I could fix the wording of that. There's something to be said for having a deadline and saying, okay, at 10 o'clock every morning, this is going to be finished. If you're a consultant, if you're interested in accounting, well, having a blog where you share your insights as to what makes a great accountancy practice is, again, a way to burnish your reputation. So for me, with some time on my hands in January of 2017, it was entirely logical to say, okay, I'm going to start with a blog. Now, a blog is nice. A website is nice, but key to any digital presence, I think, is email. So email was also always going to be part of anything that I did, that I started, and should be part of what you do. So some advertisers, once I began to get a critical advertising audience, I had people willing to pay me to run ads. enough really to cover those incidental expenses I talked about. And then more importantly, I moved into the member supported, audience supported model that's maybe most successfully used by public radio. And Memberful is a platform that's since been bought by Patreon. You may be familiar with both of those. They're kind of like Kickstarter, but people pledge money on a monthly basis. They give you your credit card, and then every month, you dive in and you get $5 minus processing fees. It's like $4.45 a month. And then you recognize those people. At least in my case, there's a page where if you support money, your name goes on a website, which again doesn't cost me anything, but it does make people feel better. And for those who give a little bit more, there's a whole tier of membership or support levels. I have a special Facebook group. If you give me $10 a month, you get an invitation to the Facebook group where I kind of reveal behind the scenes thinking and ask for insight. What do you think? Is it a good idea if I do this? Should I sell t-shirts? Are you interested in t-shirts? That kind of insider information.
Scaffolding up because they're placing the art glass ley lights below the skylight.
So and I won't make you watch it, but that's a tour of Unity Temple in Oak Park. And then it justifies spending time to create podcasts. So again, even though Chicago Public Square is a daily email news briefing, I can do through partners, in this case, Wednesday Journal newspaper in Oak Park, some on-stage interviews with people like Peter Sagal, the host of Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me.
Peter Sagal is the host of NPR's incredibly successful show, Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me. But I hate the title of my radio show. I have always hated the title of my radio show. You know what else he hates? The place where he works. Navy Pier. It's beautiful. It's lovely. It's on the lake. Navy Pier.
This can apply, this model, which I'm applying to a daily news briefing for Chicago, including national and international and local news, can apply for anything. You could create a daily or weekly or monthly or twice a week, whatever frequency you want, source for email on the environment. You set up Google News alerts so that you're alerted when any news, anybody of expertise says something that is relevant. Follow smart people in your field. In my case, it's journalists in Chicago and Washington, among other places. And then when I look at Twitter, Twitter can recommend other people who are expert in fields that I'm already engaged with on Twitter. Nuzzle is a great tool. Nuzzle is a free app that looks at what your friends are sharing on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and then serves up the articles that they are sharing. You can look at their tweets if you want, but generally it shows the things they're sharing. So if you follow smart people, then you become smart too. They're sharing, they're on the cutting edge. You're not quite on the cutting edge, but you're just a little bit behind them if you follow them on social media. Nuzzle lets you, if you want, publish your own email newsletter, not quite as fancy in terms of layout. But the bottom line is, you just do it. Start a blog. A few postscripts. Whatever you do, if you're creating a media platform, writing counts, style counts. Writing and style count. So you should make sure you're a good writer, really for any kind of website, media or otherwise, any kind of digital presence you're creating. It's a good idea to follow AP style. And metrics count. Whatever you do, pay attention to metrics. This is an April Fool's thing I did for Chicago Public Square shortly after launch. It was an all donut issue. And even though every article was about donuts, you can see some of these got more clicks than others. And that kind of insight, that item at the bottom, you can't read it, but it was a photo gallery of beautiful, beautiful donuts that got 12% of the audience engaged. People wanted to see pictures of donuts. That's the kind of insight you can use on a day-to-day basis.
The challenge with content is it's not scalable. A great movie takes lots and lots of humans to put together, right? And on a smaller scale, a great newspaper takes lots and lots of humans to put together. A great radio station takes real talent, and if you have one great radio station or one great radio app, building more great radio apps, generally takes more people creating more content. It's not like a Google or a Facebook where you create one template and then the more people who use it, the more popular it gets. Selling investors, and this is a challenge with Rivet. We had visions of investors saying, "Oh, we want to be part of the next great thing." It's hard to get them in because the question they ask is, "How are you going to grow it?" You know, once you have 500 or 500,000 people using it, how are you going to get to 2 million? And there are limits to content, language, for instance. You know, if you're going to create content for different countries, you really need different creators, different voices. And so that's a skeptical thing, that attitude that investors bring to the startup world. There's a bit of a bubble going on now, maybe a bubble, maybe not, with the podcasting business, which is near and dear to my heart. You know, Jeremy and I go back to college radio. I love creating radio. I love talking on a microphone. But investors are skeptical about content plays. Takes a special kind of investor. You know, it's more interesting from the revenue side, because when you have, you know, a YouTube or a Facebook or a Twitter, and the content is being generated by the users, and the more users you have, the more content you have, the bigger audience you get. But what you lose is control, and you wind up with the kinds of headaches that Facebook and YouTube are facing now. You have people gaming the system, using the system for political gain. I think in the long run, and Chicago Public Square is something that I very deliberately set out to, I mean, it's in a sense sort of the anti-Facebook. It is, this is going to be about Chicago for people interested in Chicago. And it is going to be for advertisers who are interested in reaching people who are interested in Chicago. It's not going to grow topsy-turvy. There's a possibility at some point of launching public square blogs for other cities, but you know, that's not going to be a massive explosion of content. It'll be a very deliberate kind of, here's someone else who thinks as I do and can do the same kind of thing that we're doing in Chicago elsewhere. But I think that the potential there is to connect with a small but dedicated group of users who are willing to pay just enough to keep things going, maybe more, and advertisers who want to reach an audience that's that engaged.
So for Chicago Public Square, you basically have used your own money. You've mentioned very little amounts of it, but your own money to rather than going out and getting investors.
Yes. And I think that's you know, if you got investors, that's great, but it's worth bearing in mind that investors want their money back. And that's a challenge for anyone who's starting up a business. You either need, in the media business, which is what I presume we're primarily talking about here, you need investors with a very long time frame. Building audience takes time. Building loyalty takes time. People aren't going to declare their loyalty after you've been in business for a week. They aren't going to pledge you. I mean, it was a year before I asked people reading Chicago Public Square, in a sense, my investors, for any money. And that was after proving to them, in a sense, okay, I'm going to do this almost every day. I take time off for vacations, etc. I'm a one-man show at this point. But after demonstrating for a year that I provided something that is of value to them, I basically said, what's this worth to you? And as I say, you know, about 8% of my subscription base thinks it's worth something between $5 and $10 a month, which is what they're paying me. No questions, no further questions asked. And again, that's not the kind of money that will get an investor thrilled. It is the kind of money that allows the work to be done.
But this is all happening, this timeline is happening as local newspapers are struggling to survive. And that's a business you were intimately involved with at the Tribune.
Local radio news, local newspaper news, yes.
So is this some sort of functional replacement or something else?
I don't know if anyone's familiar with some of my favorite science fiction books by Isaac Asimov, the Foundation Trilogy. And it's actually more than that, where a small group of people recognize that civilization is about to collapse. And they set out to preserve human knowledge in a remote location so that after civilization collapses, they can come back in and rebuild. for years, going back to my time at Tribune, I talked somewhat fantastically about people working on the internet sort of because the truth is, in my time at the internet, there were people on the print side of the newspaper who said, we will not work with the internet team. My team will never write a story for your internet team. They were quite separate. That's over now. But, you know, in those days, I thought, well, okay, we're just going to keep working quietly here on the side on the internet so that when print publications collapse, we have something that can support journalism. The other thing that happened in my time at Tribune in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, the company used a business cliche that you don't hear so much anymore. It's we're going to right size our company, meaning we're going to shrink this company to the point where our staffing makes sense for the money that we're taking in. And we all cringed at that phrase, right sizing. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought there's some truth there. There is, in this new media landscape, where there aren't 2 or 3 big media companies in each town anymore. There are lots of them. There aren't 3 or 4 big TV networks in the country now. There are lots and lots of TV networks. There is a right size for media companies, a point at which the money they're making is enough to support the staff and provide a little bit of profit, not the huge profit margins that they were used to having when the Chicago Tribune was, you know, Chicago's biggest newspaper, Chicago's biggest TV station, Chicago's biggest radio station, and nobody could come close. That's not the case anymore. So there's a right size, and the race is on now for media companies of all sizes, big ones and little ones. Who can get to that right size quickest? Is it big companies shrinking? Is it little companies growing? So, not to sound too grandiose, but you know, there's a possibility, slim, but not out of the realm of possibility, that Chicago Public Square could grow to that right size before the Chicago Tribune could shrink to it. That's probably not going to happen. I mean, this is a fun thing that I'm doing, and it's as much as anything a demonstration project for you and for others to follow, all of the Foundation of Isaac Asimov's books. But it's not out of the realm of possibility for you that the company that you build as a very small thing could grow to a right size before a big company could shrink to that size.
And much has been written about the need to be agile in all of this. So certainly starting small and growing is probably easier to be agile than being the big Goliath trying to shrink it down.
And I say this is a veteran of you know, maybe 3 startups at this point. It's a lot more fun to grow than it is to shrink. It's a lot more fun to hire people or to launch new projects than it is to have to lay people off or shut down projects. So it's not necessarily as lucrative, certainly not in the short run. So if you have student loans, you may not be, you know, as comfortable doing this. But if you come out of college debt free, and you're lucky enough to have a place to sleep at night, maybe courtesy of parents or friends or relatives, it's an ideal time to follow your dream and do something like what I've been doing at Chicago Public Square for the last couple of years.